The Packers are a damn mess. My name is Joe Dolan, and this is the Fantasy Points Daily Lineup for Wednesday, November 9th, 2022.
It's time for the FantasyPoints.com Daily Lineup. Staying on top of the latest news and updates around the NFL. Rise and shine, folks. We're taking the field. Here's your host, FantasyPoints.com's Joe Dolan.
Aaron Rodgers is our quarterback one, and I'm wondering if he wishes he retired. One thing Rodgers has always been known for is his incredible avoidance of interceptions. So when you see him throw 3 of them in one game, all 3 of which, by the way, were in the red zone, including 2 in the end zone, you know he's pressing like crazy. In a loss to the dreadful Lions defense, Rodgers went 23 of 43 for 291 yards with a touchdown and 3 interceptions, as mentioned. It was Rodgers' first 3-interception game since 2017. It's more interceptions than he threw in total in the entire 2018 season. And he now has 7 picks on the season, more than he's thrown in any complete season since 2016 as well. As a matter of fact, the last time he had more than 7 in one season was in 2015. Rodgers has been an NFL starter for 15 seasons, and in 8 of those seasons, he had fewer than 7 interceptions. He's also never had a worse receiving core, one that got even thinner in Week 9 after rookie Romeo Doubs was injured on the first play of the game. The Packers are 3-6. Their offensive line can't stay healthy. Their best offensive player, more on him later, got hurt, and Rodgers is playing the worst football of his career. In our first running back spot, do we have a change in Miami? Now, the Dolphins acquired Jeff Wilson from Mike McDaniel's old 49er offense on the November 1st trade deadline, and he immediately stepped into the lead spot ahead of Raheem Mostert with just 5 days to prepare for Week 9. Now, Wilson paced Mostert in snap share, 50-46%, touches, 12-9, and scrimmage yards, 72-26, on his way to 16.2 fantasy points in his debut against the Bears. Mostert scored a touchdown to save his day a bit, but he still finished with fewer than 9 fantasy points for the 3rd time in 4 games. Now, Wilson is likely to lead this timeshare most weeks moving forward, since the Dolphins would ideally like to slide Mostert into a change of pace role, as they initially intended before Chase Edmonds absolutely stunk up the joint, before they traded him to Denver in the Bradley Chubb trade. Mostert should still be rostered, but he's trending in the wrong direction as the 1B in this backfield. In our second running back spot is that Packer offensive player I mentioned earlier. Aaron Jones carried just 9 times for 25 yards and caught 2 passes for 20 yards before leaving with an ankle injury in Week 9. Now, he played just 41% of the offensive snaps, a season low. His status is going to have to be monitored this week because he was in a walking boot after the game, but it doesn't look like this is a particularly serious injury, at least in relation to what happened to Romeo Doubs. Now, we'll have to monitor him throughout the week, starting today, by the way, when practice reports come out, as early week indicators are often more optimistic than late week ones, but it looks like Jones dodged a serious bullet for ESPN's Adam Schefter, as he, quote, should be able to play this week. Now, A.J. Dillon, if he's been dropped, is a solid conditional add in the interim. Our first wide receiver spot is occupied by someone who has been seriously up and down. Bills' Gabriel Davis has been the definition of an all-or-nothing option in this season, with 16-plus fantasy points in 3 games and 7 or fewer fantasy points in his other 4 contests. He's been giving his managers too many down performances in recent weeks, with his last usable fantasy performance coming in Week 6. He's been limited to just 4 catches for 68 yards receiving on 12 targets in his last 2 games in matchups against guys like Jair Alexander and Sauce Gardner. Now, it also doesn't help that Josh Allen is going through his first rough patch of the season over the last 6 quarters, averaging 6.1 yards per attempt with a 0 touchdown to 4 interception ratio. Allen also, of course, is banged up with the UCL injury. Maybe we'll get more on that today. Now, playing Davis as a wide receiver 3 each week isn't for the faint of heart, but he should get some chances to be a week winner with some beatable matchups over the next 3 weeks against the Vikings, Browns, and Lions. I'm monitoring the matchup for Amari Cooper in our second wide receiver spot. Now, this matchup is fascinating because our guy Scott Barrett has long advocated and proven, quite frankly, that Cooper is one of the most shadow-sensitive receivers in football. When he gets tight shadow coverage, he often gets shut down. And the Dolphins' Xavier Howard is a shadow corner, facing 5 different receivers on more than 56% of their routes this season. However, he's been exploitable. 4 of those 5 receivers have gone for 36 or more yards: Rashad Bateman, Stephon Diggs, T. Higgins, and Justin Jefferson in Howard's primary coverage. Both Bateman and Jefferson went for over 90 yards on Howard, while both Bateman and Higgins scored on him. The one receiver Howard did shut down, Devontae Parker, holding him to no catches in primary coverage on a 90% shadow rate. So what gives? Howard's somewhat atypical struggles this year, or Cooper's historical tendency to wilt when he has the same corner in his pocket all game? This will be an interesting game for Donovan Peoples-Jones, by the way. And in our flex spot, the Vikings had a clear plan for their new tight end. TJ Hawkinson played nearly all of the snaps in his Vikings debut, catching all 9 targets thrown his way for 70 yards. He saw more playing time this week than any Vikings tight end has seen this season so far, with a 91% snap share. Now, it's pretty safe to say that Hawkinson is a mainstay as a fantasy weapon for the rest of the season after the Vikings dealt 2 day 2 picks to the Lions for him. Now, especially since the Commanders, who there was their matchup this past week, are one of the better teams against the tight end in the NFL. Hawkinson ran the fourth most routes on the Vikings on Sunday, and you should definitely expect him to progress to running the 3rd most, maybe the 2nd most over the next few weeks. And from our guy Chris Weck of Fantasy Points Data, 2 of Hawkinson's 9 targets were designed for him. He hadn't seen a single designed target since week 1 with Detroit. I'm Joe Dolan. This has been the Fantasy Points Daily Lineup. Go to fantasypoints.com. Use the code LINEUP22 to get an extra 10% off any package at fantasypoints.com. I'll see you in our subscriber Discord, where you can chat with me, ask questions, whatever you want to do. And I'll also catch you tomorrow morning on the Daily Lineup. Bye-bye, everyone.